on the computer. All right, and thank God my sharing screen works. I have to actually share the whole screen because I'm jumping between things. So that's not where I start, though. I'll start here. This is, by the way, updated from the one that I uploaded in the Telegram. But it's sort of a playground. But I just put it in the background because it's just one direction. And actually, before that, we could start from the kind of beginning. So we'll come back to this. But so the kind of origin of the idea towards these genes was annoyance, because I was in this crypto commons gathering. Oh, yeah, good. He arrives just in time. And hello, Jakub, can you hear
everyone?
us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
As a punishment, you don't get to say how are you, because you just missed the how are you round. But luckily, you were at the beginning of the beginning round.
Yes.
So
nice, thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, like the beginnings were that there was this crypto commons gathering, which Jakub and Rock and certainly know because they were there, as was I, and there was a lot of memes because they had a meme channel, and there was a various place around memes which probably kind of inspired certain thoughts, but I'm not going to go there because they're kind of off the topic. But one of the key things was this annoyance, because the meme channel was bursting with people doing memes, and I cannot meme. Like, I make them too, but like the normal memes are something I'm not, I think, good at. So, but being obligated to somehow participate for various reasons, I decided that, okay, I'll just make a new genre. And then I was like, if I can make memes playful, then I can create this field where I'm potentially good at, and therefore kind of like arid sparse ground. You can be a good there because nobody knows how to move there. So so that actually, I should have them here. No, I don't actually. Well, I can have them here. This takes one step. Okay, let's jump here, and let's jump here. Yes. So I made like proof of concept. I think this one was the first, which was like, okay, like the key thing about this, and this is maybe the first key point which travels all the way through, is it is about relation. And the interesting thing about memes, as I started thinking about it, is that while they are kind of, well, they are conventional in one ways, but you can also think of them as experimental in certain ways. But there's one thing where they're very traditional. And that one thing is that the relation of a person in front of the meme is just like the relation of a person in front of the movie, in front of the picture, in front of a book. That is, they are a spectator. And this is also, you can then kind of expand from there, that this is also why people are saying like, hey, that's a good meme or that's a bad meme, because that's what spectators do. They evaluate value in a way. They can do other things, and there is a certain level of create your own culture, certainly in memes. But like the person getting the meme is a spectator-like thing. And I was like, aha, so here's where they're going to group up with the convention. And so, but if that relation of the person in front of the meme is changed, this is where you have the possibility to switch to play in a more comprehensive manner. So I made a proof of concept, which was just a simple and kind of banal, because it was also communicating to people in crypto. So I made normal topics. So I made this kind of an idea of a board game, which was like, there are these normal terms in memes, and here there are normal terms in crypto world like Vitalik, which is Vitalik Buterin, and crypto nerds, and fiat currencies. But then you have an image. But the idea is that actually think of where they are placed for yourself. So if I make that, here are crypto nerds, and I should have Elon Musk here. Maybe it's behind my, is it there? Like it might be behind my.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah,
I can
it's
see it.
yeah, it's behind my bar. So my Zoom bar. Um, so if I make this figure here, uh, yeah, into crypto nerds, this sort of semi-innocent figure, and then I make this skeletal head wrapper into Elon Musk, move the Elon Musk there, and I make the floating balloon into, let's say, elder capitalists, and then like the clouds are vaporware. It becomes a certain kind of meme, like so Elon Musk, the skeleton riding on the dreams of crypto nerds, and while the elder capitalists look from above. So, but of course I could make them different. And for the testing version, I also kind of used the same, but changed the image. So maybe here, the Elon Musk could be the old orangutan reading a book that is kind of wise but bumbling, and then the crypto nerds could be all this crowd around it, and shit coins are bleeding out of the shoe, the slime there. Who knows? Like these kind of possibilities. Same thing appears here, but this was just a proof of concept that okay, there can be something that is packaged like a meme, and while you can have like 3-sentence rules for it, it also even doesn't necessarily need those rules. Maybe just the title, and people can learn it along the way. Uh, then then there can be this sort of playful relation. And there was surprising interest around this because I thought it was just a proof of concept. But even when I made this, I had another idea, which was much, much bigger, and I thought much, much cooler, which was like, okay, if the relation of the person can be playful, what is the actually interesting play? And from here, we can jump to this, or maybe this one, which was kind of like a first test. So I started with this, and okay, so what do we have as elements? I could put like 3 different areas, and I wasn't so clear on them then, but I'm clear on them now. But I do think they are good, not, what's it, like crystallization is the word I'm looking for. Crystallization of thinking, like on the one end of a triad of this tree is a kind of artistic expression, like anything could be expressed essentially. Now, of course, with memes, as with gems, you can use others' artistic expression, but of course, nothing prevents you from making a picture, and we can come to later that the sources can be something else than pictures and images as well. But beyond that, like, of course, what you create is sort of also artistic expression. And there is a particular freedom, like artistic expression doesn't say conventional meaning, but kind of tries to skirt off of it. And here I could mention that I ran this by Thea, which has been in our meetings, but is currently occupied in other course, sadly. But there, we had a collaboration. I showed this idea, and she was also, our conversation was helpful in terms of thinking that, in terms of art. And one thing also that came about is this, like in a way, like art is kind of like a metaphor in the sense that it gives you this meaning that doesn't have a solution. Like it's not like like it's an absurd question to ask what is the right answer. But that if you flip that around, that is a really interesting point, because then it makes it like this thing that doesn't have a right answer is kind of like a generator in waiting. In arts, it's often waiting because people are in the spectatorial point that they're thinking, okay, I'm just thinking of what's the value of this. But it's like underneath that work harbors this generator, because there's no one right answer, there's infinite answers, and therefore there's a generator. So, okay, but that leads to the second part of the triad, which is more akin to tarot cards. And I find tarot cards and the likenesses of them, which there aren't many, quite interesting, because they're kind of like images like this. But they're also kind of like concepts, like concepts of work, like this has a meaning. But they very heavily bank on this, that there is no right meaning here. Like I mean, people create kind of superficial tarot books and tell you that Empress means this and that and whatever. But like underneath, the idea is that there is you are actually there. Unlike in traditional relation to art, you are pushed to generate. You're like, oh, you got this card and it has these meanings, but you are about to generate these meanings. And there's no right answer, but you should seek them. So the generator is much more present there. So like one could call, if I make up a term for it, that tarot is almost like a kaleidoscopic speculum, to make that monster of a phrase, like in the sense of like speculum, that it's like speculative observing something, and speculum also means a mirror, so you're kind of looking at yourself but in a speculative manner from the image. And then kaleidoscopic because it can change once you emphasize certain area of the tarot image, you see different things or think about different things and so on and so forth. So it's that kind of a generator in and of itself. But so this is already interesting, but then we come to the third part of the triad, like, which is, well, but for games, there's this whole interesting, like a universe really of structure. Like how do parts combine? That is like if there's something of a game, like a piece in a game, it's also related to other things that can be imagined to be in the game itself. And we could use, like, of course, like a board gaming example is like there are pieces on the board and they relate to other pieces. But then, like in role-playing games, somebody reads a description, but the description is supposed to be a person. And then it's played like a person, that it will answer beyond the description. Or it's a place. And then it's also like generates stuff that is more than what the description was. The description is just an instrument, but it generates different things than the person, because place behaves differently, like a city behaves differently than a person. So, but that puts an interesting quality again, that, okay, if there are these things that you're supposed to play with, and there is this sort of kaleidoscopic speculum idea, and then there is this sort of like a artistic like expression that anything could be expressed. But then finally there is this like playfulness that, like, for example, this first one I made was just like taking an image, which is of course not mine, but just like an interesting image. And then there's this moment like, okay, I'll decide that the duck in the middle, the plastic duck, is squeaking areas, like operatic. And this is now a quality, okay. And then, but the singer is actually the fish underneath, which are then tenor fish. I'm just making this up. And then these carrots, for me, I decided they're carrots in the background, like, and then they're carrot zombies. And then I was like, why are they there? Well, the singing makes them feel alive. And the butterflies piss all this water and so on and so forth. But then that could be packaged as a scene. It could also be packaged as a place or an event, meaning like something that has already happened. But like if you think of it like a scene or a place, like if it's given as like a scene or a place, it could be played in the sense that like somebody actually shows or looks, first of all, alone, can observe the picture, and then like that can create even a small shift of, okay, that what happens here, like are the carrots like jumping into the water and floating? That's already kind of playful, and it could be just that. But you can think of it also in a larger sense, that like in a way that plays could be played for others. Like you arrive here and you're hearing these areas and arias, and then there is the butterflies are floating about, and then there's this weird carrot-like things that are weaving or like moving in the background. And then that person or persons who would arrive here, maybe they have another gene, which is actually a character for them. So made in this maybe a similar fashion, maybe in a different fashion, but it's generating a character for them, and then the character arrives to the scene. But then things kind of completely blow up from there. Like you can think like, okay, this is actually a scene, but also a place. But one person could have like different places that could be forming almost like a map-like thing, that if you travel there, then another gene is brought about. But it could also be organized more like a line, which is more like a narrative. Like once you are here, then after it, I will bring another gene. So things are moving in a line. And maybe you don't have characters, but we're simply like actually together generating something of it. So then it's a collective story, and on and on. Like you can, I could also say that this is actually a phenomena, and the phenomena is like a part of the ecosystem, that this happens all around in an imagined world, that they're always, this is what the tenor fishes do, that they like entice these sort of carrot zombies into places, and then maybe they eat them, and then that phenomena becomes a logic in this world, which might not have anything else than that logic at that point. But and yes, like I said, on and on, like the possibilities. So in a way, like the meme-like form, just with the change of attitude, and can change not only the approach, while keeping itself into like the expressive range of a meme. Not that it has to, but it can. It can generate this sort of structurations which can be in and of themselves worlds, but also game-like. Like playing this collective story is a different game than playing this as a world is a different game of playing it as a world, but actually kind of using everything to generate a quality to the ecosystem. Like, okay, this is the first in the ecosystem, and let's say this one is the second in the ecosystem, and maybe it does have this text to urge things, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe we start with the empty picture, but then it creates probably a very wacky place in and of itself. Then a kind of one more kind of practical point is there should, of course, not be like exact precise rules for this kind of directions. But there are certain things that are more almost like expressive possibilities. So like between these two, I've started developing these ideas. Like there's this, like a simple thing of writing something with double colon and a name. Like first of all, there's the cap, in caps, the entity, which means what kind of type it is. So this is suggesting, not that you have to use it, suggesting an entity. It could be suggesting a character, it could be suggesting a place, but here it's like a being. And then it's this sort of dream summoner giants. And then like the bullet points underneath it are relating to that they're kind of fleshing out that idea. Like that so these giants are dreaming, and while they dream, I guess they're dreaming awake, but that's really up to whoever is looking at it to decide. But while they dream, they conjure into existence this sort of blue people and their homes. The people are blue in the picture. And the blue folk raise these cats, and when there is 5 cats, they will merge into giants, and that's how giants procreate. So this path, and then there is a city that populates by giants going around in different places and dreaming up blue people who then raise cats, which becomes giants. That's there. But then there is this in the left bottom corner. There's like these questions, which you maybe play or maybe don't play, like sites within the city of blues. So if there is like this sort of city generating here, what kind of sites could it have? Like you could take that as a question and go from there. Or roles of the giants in the city. Like these are almost like options, and you could have many of them. And then these ones on the right corner, which are with an exclamation point, is more like game-like tasks, which could be more exact, but here it's like just find other widely different gems for the city and grow the city as a patchwork. So it's like, okay, I'll take different pictures. Let's see, I should have open here. Like maybe you take this one, and then maybe maybe there is no text, or maybe there is text to make it a gem. Doesn't really matter. But how is this then connected to the city that was dreamed by the blue giants? Maybe this is the map of the homes, and this river-like area is where the giants move around for whatever reason. And then I write those down, and I don't even know what it means, but there's this interesting quality that actually sometimes the uncertainty actually spurs play, because then the others can make the details if they take it. Like if I just add those two things and send it like that, somebody could answer that by writing on it or playing, somehow otherwise expressing of how this is connected to the city, and therefore a city grows. Whatever it is, but essentially like this, there's probably other ways of like simple expression that can still create different directions beyond this question marks as question optional questions to think about, and exclamation points as kind of like instructions in a way, and then this sort of more let's build like a larger meaning kind of things, like the one on the top right corner. So okay, yes, that's a good one, Pablo. But I've talked long enough, and I haven't left any room for comments or questions. But this is sort of trying to paint the background picture with some details to flesh out. There is also like different game structures upon it and so on, details to come. But for now, let's open the room a bit and kind of put a pause on my monologue. So any comments?
Would you say, or would you summarize this as this format of a game as a micro game to be played, and the result of that game is the game becomes a meme? Like, do you think this outputs through game, it outputs a meme?
One can, like, that would be one step of it. Like,
Mm.
in a way, and it's almost like that could be almost like a Lego piece, or one kind of a Lego piece. But then there is this key possibility that it's a game that is a seed of games, that other games can be built out of it. Like if you lay these gems and include even among them, say, pictures without no text, and then you say, okay, we are generating an ecosystem, then you are in a game that uses this game Lego blocks. So it has this sort of, because I think that was actually very important what you said, like that this can kind of play in this almost like this fragmented sense of how a meme plays. Like even this one move of, oh, that's a cool, somebody thinks that it's an interesting idea that chants procreate by dreaming up with blue people, or maybe something simpler like this one, like that is kind of a lot meme-like state. But and you could say it's almost like it's very close to tarot reading also in that sense, and like, and it's already kind of like almost like a slice, like a five small cut from a movie, from play. But then like uh, saying this, like, okay, we create a story out of this, or I'm actually generating a world and then I'm inviting other people into the world and they take their own pictures and then they create their instruments for being a persona by putting text on those pictures to remember what the persona is and keep on changing it. Then you have this sort of game built out of those Lego blocks, and of course that's just one type of a game. So it is sort of like a meta game or old game or Lego block like game. I don't know what the term is. It's a structure that I don't quite know another structure that would be like it, but I think it's a key possibility to look at it both as kind of playable by itself, but also a Lego block for other kind of play. Yes, to your comment. Yes.
I guess I was asking because last time we sort of played a different type of game where I mean, it was specific to that occasion, could become a thing or not, a format or not, but we sort of like came up with a game to come up with um, the words that then we related, and that could have evolved into a meme. So
Yes.
I'm thinking like this idea of expanding a universe where both memes and games can emerge. But
Mm.
I'm thinking of the if it is important to finish with an output, like in that sense I find very different a meme from the tarot, where the process is,
Mm.
the journey is the thing, right? um from having like an output meme out of a process. Like, is that always desirable? Probably not, right? And
Mm.
how does that process where memes are not generated feed into meme structures? I don't know. Is that clear? Maybe not.
Yeah, yeah. I think both are possible. Like you don't have to generate it, but you can generate it. It's about the kind of how to see the Lego block as minimal in itself. Like it can be just somebody viewing, but even in the viewing, it creates a kind of tarot state, which is kind of like, I would say tarots are playful. Like even if you don't express it, uh, uh, and that is the kind of why I included them in the triad. But then if you turn it into an expression, even if you just tell to someone, like, oh, I read in this card this and that, it's definitely a generator, and then leads to an expression. But then like that, those expressions can have this sort of game-like structuring that comes out of it. Like think about this. If I don't remember what pictures there are, but okay, let's say we're generating a person. Maybe it's a game character, maybe it's not, and we get random pictures. Or we take random pictures, and here is one of them. And then we decide that actually, no, it's not the boring or whatever looking barbarian in the lower left corner. It's this tower, which is the place where the person is born. I don't know what that means. I just put it there. But now there is like, okay, what does that mean? Like, and what kind of qualities could come from there? And new things could be added. Like somebody could put like it's a place where that rotates, and sometimes it creates a baby, and maybe that's all, And then this is the picture. Okay, random picture. This is the picture of the person. Or maybe their brother, or whatever. Like we can, or this is how they see themselves, which makes every one of those short descriptions makes the picture different. This is the person versus this is how they see themselves leads to very different branchings and different directions. But so that is building. But meanwhile, there's also building a kind of game that actually these two things are a composite for creating a character. And then that character could go and once it's built, could say visit a city or even see this scene. Like this is like you come to the city and or the outskirts of the city, and this is what you see, and like and then something could build from there. Like but in addition, I promise I shut up soon, but like you could have, say, a meta game where you have this template somebody has made, and let's say it's for making a character, to make this simple. One doesn't have to change too many conditions, but it's like has a slot for a question, which means that it's a question that constantly is present in the person's mind, or it's a repeating question that they think about. And one is their current role in life, and one slot is for their looks or whatever, like these kind of slots. And then you get pictures, or you pick pictures, and you place like for example, their looks could be this. Like you place this, and then but then the question is maybe this is like the question that it's question about growing, and how growing inwards turns into growing outwards is the thought that this picture brings to me, because the tree is growing out of the mouth. Okay, now this is interesting, and now that template-like thing of like placing these things in is creating a different kind of character. But you could have a template for a city or a weather or an object, or like I could just go on, because it's an endless list. Okay, I'll shut up again. Yeah, as you can see, I've been thinking about this a lot.
Hey, yeah, a few comments. I find this very, very exciting because it's so kind of intuitive. You don't, you see one, and then you kind of know a lot about how to kind of work with it, or what are the possibilities. I mean, of course, you need to see the more complex structures as well as with that dreaming image in order to know about the possibilities in that sort of like more game way. But yeah, I just like try to think what is going on there, and then really that okay, you have this finished complete images that are many times they are kind of surreal. They don't have to be, but they are, and there are some sort of like relations, or there are some components in the image, and then once you start kind of filling out the textual layer, you put one text first, and then there is a relation. There is probably a relation with the second text to the first text once you start doing it. So they feed each other, and they kind of grow. They almost immediately grow out of the actual image, but kind of drawing from the relations that you have there.
Yeah.
And what I find kind of interesting is that okay, what kind of as a kind of just like a side quest, what would happen if let's say if it were before the layering with the text, if there were a kind of surrealist image drawing, or let's say like I'm now drawing this thing here. I don't have to know what it is, or I don't have to know the relations or so on, but on a completely blank paper, and then I maybe put the text there as well, or then we just like fill out it, draw it together, and then we start like texting it. Or this just came to my mind that in principle you could do the same with the image as you are doing with the text, but of course you would lose lots about the meme-likeness in that sense.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Although, like for the text side, there are also textual memes. It's a branch of memes which are mostly text, um, uh, like a block of text kind of things, and that like whether they existed or not, one could also take this freedom that let's say I'm creating a place or a mixture of a place and a kind of a scenario, like an adventure-like thing, and I'm just making it as a collection of these gems, and some of them are pictures with text, some of them are text, and then in addition, like I have one picture which is more like a map where I place them in like distances that they form this sort of a place. Then that can travel also as a whole, like into somebody could play that. Like of course one could play it oneself, but somebody could just take it, and then that could form another thing, whether it's a gem or just another expression, like people chatting, like, "Hey, I played this and this happened," and things. And this the through like these examples, and this is I think also kind of present in the themes you were just talking about. This is kind of touching upon this what one could call possible realms, which is kind of beyond the possible worlds, but also the themes that we talked about in the saving and capturing. But it's kind of like because of its flexibility, it can go any place or it can recreate any of these structures. Because, like in a weird way, it's semantic, but it's semantic also in this sort of playful way that it can be like word like text-like or world-like. It could say it's a narrative. It's like you must play one after another, kind of narrative-like in that sense, or you must play one after another, and that there is a branching, like you choose. But it could also play like, oh, these are actually on a map. But it could also play like the example of this template of making a character or weather, which had the question and the outlook and things like this. And then all of those are transferable or expressible, essentially, messages to the world, which then others are also urged to play upon, not just take them as is. Of course, they can go like, hey, that's cool, that brought me this thought, that's enough. But like if they play with it, then they generate other things again, which can take any structures. Now we are into like an extreme version of the semantic space that can be created from there.
I guess I'll throw in some ideas as well. So yeah, throughout this, I was also thinking about meme culture as such, as a kind of game. Maybe not so banal, but it's definitely some kind of performance. But it also has to do with like more memes, more meme literacy, like in terms of like specific ways into tapping into collective unconscious. And there was some parallels with memes and like inside jokes for me. Like it's not only this, of course, but there's a lot of this, or about even establishing or maintaining or morphing an inside joke space.
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually, because like the inside jokes are culture that memes generate. Like in a way, like extra knowledge that is built around them. And here you could see, of course, similar things forming, but you can also see that in a way, like if somebody played through certain memes, it's another kind of extra knowledge. That maybe it's like well, just like in memes, certain things might want to travel into a lot of places. Like people seem to like the fact that say, let's repeat this meme, but it's always a little bit different. So you could see here, like, let's actually, there's the city that, or something city like that becomes interesting, let's repeat it, but everybody like, haha, I made this black market here. And then it kind of percolates to potentially other ideas, etc. So, so in a way, like it's extra knowledge, it's also potentially extra play.
Yeah, another point was, I guess, about the kind of generative, yeah, gaming, however our preferences.
I don't know, actually. You can decide.
I guess it'll be both, like GIFs and GIFs.
Yes, it's the same fight.
Yeah.
GIF.
But well, it's, I guess, a small example, but if some remember in my games, well, I used the Porky meme, right? Like Porky scared and Porky satisfied memes, like the old Soviet propaganda, whatever memes. And well, I can definitely imagine, I mean, the story making is a kind of meme making in some way. It could be also taken very literally, and meme making being a part of such a game. So just thinking in terms of modularities, meme making being a part of a broader generative engine, or one of a broader game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely agreed. Like, and it also kind of, these kind of possibilities are fed by that. If one thinks about this as a structure, like, is it local or global? Well, it's kind of both. So there's the word local, of course, like the combination is that in a way, like there can be one person playing or people playing in a small group, but in a way, like also when these teams travel, then there is a kind of globality to them as well. And it's a kind of interesting possibility of this for forming these pockets, which then create extra knowledge and extra play, which then can be fed back into or bleed over into other contexts, which then make their own versions and own takes on the things themselves.
I wonder how would it play out if you would have like two image kind of that you would be working at the same time, so that they would kind of feed into each other's realms, and but still like be a kind of photography like, so that one image wouldn't show everything, but kind of cross pollinate or so on.
Yeah, this is a definitely like a huge possibility. Like the two images is like in the structural realm, just like the earlier version of this, like a template where you slot the question and the outlook and other things. Like in a way, like it's pointing into a horizon, which is huge. Like you could say, okay, this is played with two images, or this is played like the series, but we see always what is coming next. Like we are in this gene, but we can see the next one, and when we move to that, we can see the future one, and on and on. Like there's essentially like an infinity of structures in there. I think that the general thing I would say from kind of playtesting. Let me pull up an example. So I've been testing this. Oh, it's here. Uh, uh, Alone and with like amongst the more casual call with some friends, etc. And once you're putting more, things get more interesting. Or like generally, like the first steps are raw, but then where the kind of things get interesting is often like when things start to connect to one another. So, for example, this is a kind of retelling of a playtest. Like there was just this image, which I found amusing. Like first I thought it's kind of banal, but then I thought no, it's somehow interesting. And into my mind popped the phrase scaffoldings of Christmas. So scaffoldings, you know, like the things outside the buildings when they're being renovated, like support structures, essentially. And that was probably because the thing in the background seems like a scaffolding. And but then that was interesting. It later turned into dark scaffoldings of Christmas. But like 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 in the play that created this moment where it's actually that the explanation just for that was like that maybe all festivities, or maybe Christmas in this case in particular, actually needs this darkness, and how it creates brightness, or there is a belief, this is an alternate take on Christmas, how it generates brightness is by acknowledging the darkness. That it's and then there would be this sort of rituals, maybe to acknowledge the darkness, to seek this contrast for the bright light and the warmth of the Christmas night. And this then led to, I don't have the pictures here, but searching things for the rituals. And then there came this ritual of like that every Christmas there is this one small meal, which is this black soup. And then in the beginning, everybody looks at the black soup because it's like a black mirror, and sees the darkness. Or during the night, you look at the darkness of the evening, and you look at it as long like until you see things moving, as often happens if you're looking at something very dark, you suddenly see things moving, and this is how you find the darkness. And there were pictures for this, but at this point it started to get really interesting, because then you have this sort of makings of like semi-made materials of a different kind of a take on Christmas. And I think it was precisely this sort of combination of things that that kind of can feed things into more sophisticated thoughts of themselves in a way. And maybe final comment on this, like so far in the testing, what is interesting is that often the thoughts are quite easily unconventional. Like first there is like a funny picture, scaffoldings of Christmas. Like, I mean, it's not written in the picture, but like it could as well be. And then that leads to an unconventional thought, which then feeds to another unconventional thought. And suddenly you are kind of like that in a banal language could be called, that's quite creative. but it seems to happen by itself because it's putting this unconventional connections in front of you. So you're kind of pushed to unconventional routes because of them.
There is a certain aesthetics that reminds me of in this image, that reminds me of let's say some very early text adventures from late 80s or something like that. And I was just like wondering, wow, it would be very cool to be able to kind of play this sort of like text adventure maybe with your friends and like write your own story this way and maybe reread it after that.
That's a cool idea. Like you could even play it that, okay, somebody selects images, but they are text and adventure screens, and the other players say, I click on the red guy, or I use the chainsaw on the tree. And then somebody or multiple people would say what happens. And then you take the next picture. And you're actually kind of in a text adventure, which is also kind of creative because like you couldn't, like unlike in many text adventures where there were very few things you could do, you could actually do a lot of things. And this is once again pointing how, because it's so flexible to structuring, even just coming up with this idea, you have a game like Snap, and you could start playing it here and now. Like you're loading the text adventure format, it just slots in there, and it can work. So for me, like there's this interesting that this sort of flexibility is sort of reflecting memes, like the traditional memes as well, in this sort of breeding like sense. Like memes have this quality of like breeding new memes, etc. And there's a similar kind of propensity to breed to these structures. And I think it's probably because like the beginnings try to, or the kind of originating points try to stay close to the memes, like that there is this sort of play build, but it kind of tries to take as much as possible from the memes. So it's maybe taking this breeding propensity to breeding along with it, but now it's propensity to also other things like okay, the image reminds you of text adventure game, but then that brings up the possibility of bringing the structure, and suddenly there is a new game, and that can be played in the sketchy manner, which is also kind of meme-like. That we don't know the exact rules, but like it's almost like kids game. Like, hey, you are the computer, and we are the players, and we make moves in like move north or use chainsaw on tree, and that's what we have. Like, and that's already enough to start the game.
It's really interesting that with this old text games, like you had very limited set of like verbs you could activate or so on, affordances, but but here you could kind of blow these affordances into the next millennia or something like that.
Yeah. And it actually would be interesting. Now I'm interested to play that because, like, it would be interesting what happens when you actually can play with it. But what does it create? Like, it will change the interaction. It will mutate it. It will be like text adventure, but mutated. But like, it will probably be different in a manner that is imperceivable before you actually play it. So. I'm down to playing that also, but yeah, like, and it also takes you to interesting places. Like I've seen this picture, for example. I think many times, several times before I decided to think about it as a gym material, and it's like, oh, it's a sketchy, interesting enough picture. But then, like, okay, just putting that task that I'm making a gym made me this idea that, okay, it's actually a world which is gray. Like everything is gray, and there's no land or sea or air. There's just gray, and then there's these patches of land in the gray, and then that like somehow the spiraling form in the central light can mean that actually the land is founded by that something becomes like intricate by kind of turning on itself, and it starts to form something more complex, and then it's kind of born around its area, and then that took me to think that maybe how you travel between them is you find in these places some things that are connected like wormholes to other places, and suddenly you're in a completely different place than, oh, it's a semi-cool picture. And this, by the way, took like under 2 minutes just to go there. And then like that could be my play. I could leave that there. But then I could also take from there, like, of course, I could express that as in a form of a gene that gives some of these things to other people. But I could also take the idea and use it somewhere else. So yeah, it's interesting how it changes your relation to things that you already know into this sort of like I'm urged to create, but then the creation kind of leads to things that are in some ways more important than the original sources, like, or can be certainly.
Would be kind of interesting. It probably works similar way, but still interesting to try some let's say picture or photograph. Actually, let's say black and white photograph from nearly 100 years ago, some family photo in a weird context or something like that, just to see what does it do with the atmosphere or so on.
Yeah, we could, like, how do you all feel about, like, we could try out play. Like I put some like different semi-random images like here, but I also have the one source I used a lot, which is Scroller with 3 L's. And the cool thing about Scroller is that it's a Reddit crawler. It scrolls the, I mean, Reddit has this imaginary X, like imaginary architecture is this one. But then there's like gazillion million of these, and then it kind of randomly puts from crawling Reddit these images from it. But then you could take, let's say, if we take more like this, it's a really, by the way, shitty algorithm they have for more like this, but it doesn't matter. So now we have imaginary walls from that group, or imaginary dwellings, or that's walls imaginary best of. But now we could, for example, press imaginary walls, and then, well, we get walls. But we could pick randomly. I'm sure there are photos here as well. If we want to add photos, but we could also combine things that say start with something and then add a photo, and decide how, like, what kind of branch in this infinite realm of possibilities we want to explore. But how do you feel about that?
I think I would like to play, yeah. That sounds good. I will
Yeah,
have to leave in
absolutely.
around 15 minutes, but for that time, I would be happy
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah. So if you would think, like, just what comes to mind as directions, however uncertainly, what kind of a thing you would like to make out of the play. Of course, we can start with, say, just an image and make things out of that and decide later that we'll, say, make it into some form, place, character. This could be a disease, or it could be like, let's play it in a certain kind of form, that let's make a story, and or a text adventure, by the way. That's a thing on the table. But yeah, what comes to your mind, anybody, of like an interest of a direction of play? And also like picture, etc. I can scroll some candidates.
I guess a beginner-friendly format is the one where there's a pool of words that we associate with an image, but we don't have those words.
Yeah.
So we could come up with them and then work with an image that we like and just experiment on how the meaning changes.
Yeah.
That sounds basic, but maybe that's an option.
No, definitely. Is that okay with others? And what kind of image you would like to choose? Like, I mean, this I already showed. There's also these, which are things that I saved randomly as potentially interesting.
I think, if can you hear me? And it's
Yep.
not too noisy. I think this, coming back to Mikael's point, I think it would be helpful maybe to look at a couple of rather different images just to see what is the amount of work that they do in this context. Yeah, so not a precise pick, but maybe a try of very different types of images.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely could try different kinds of images. Like, of course, I'm scrolling through some of them, and then of course here are these random selections also here. I can tell you as a base of experience, the more normal the image is, it's harder to start, because I think it's your mind holding, no, this is just a street, this is just a normal. It's the mind is kind of holding you, and if the image gives you something like a starting point, like for example, like it's easier, for example, here, like there's a mirror, but there's a different kind of season or whatever there. That's easier to start with, or say this one, because it's like, oh, is that smoke, vapor, snakes, etc., and you're off going. But if it's like a super normal picture, it can be used and one learns to use them, but they are harder, I would say.
Yeah, I do think that if there should at least be like a few recognizable, like different elements.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with any image, really.
So somebody pick an image from. There are these. There are these. There are. Losing my. So, oh, these.
They are all cool, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of scouring out images and saving them. Like it makes, like you look at images, even just the looking of it is like to the point of, oh, that's interesting. It's different.
You should have some sort of like image randomifier, so that it could pick an image for you from a pre-made selection or something. Then it would be easy.
there's actually some tools for this. Like I've also looked at the randomizers and also like give me a random image. Like there's I've still found a really good like give me a random image from the web. They always come from smaller collections, but yeah, there are some interesting sources like to get semi-random images at least. Okay, that was too fast. Okay, let's narrow it down to candidates because it's getting otherwise we'll spend too much time just selecting image. Okay, that one is I'll say that one is a candidate. Okay, that one is a interesting candidate in itself. Was it? Okay, let's do it this way. The game is whoever says stop, then we select that image. Or they can say it was the image previous, of course.
Stop.
Or is it this one or this one?
Previous.
This one, all right.
Yeah.
All right. We have an image. Now, Pablo, since you proposed like that it could be simply like if I got you right, it was kind of generating what could be the text there. And let me actually I'll just meanwhile I'm actually trying to be fancy and make us a place to add the text as well. This will take
yes, that would be great. But in the meantime, we can come up with the words.
Yes.
I would suggest that we choose words that are XORG related, so that we continue with the theme of playing XORG.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right.
But I'm not sure. I'll think of a word, a XORG related word to add.
It can also be like anybody can propose.
Yeah, everyone should propose.
Yeah.
I think we should all add to the pool as many as we see fit, I would say.
Ta-da! And then I'll press this one. And by the way, this I think I mentioned it earlier, but Photopea comes with a huge recommendation because it's Photoshop. It's like the standard Photoshop with many but the font selection is very large. So it's just a website. So but yes, okay. So any suggestions?
I'm writing words in the chat.
All right, I'll open the chat. Engine repetition divination.
I will stop there, but I would invite others to also write words.
Yeah, I'll just add them in. Let me see, what's my color?
I'd say homecoming game.
Homecoming.
Game.
Homecoming game. Okay. I'll change the color of this just after I write this. And then homecoming game. And then I'll put a little bit more space. I should probably make it larger. Does anybody know how to move the zoom bar, the bar that is on your screen, top of your screen? It's currently on my. Okay, I can do this. Let's put them red. And let's put them slightly larger. Why didn't you turn red? I wanted to turn red. All right. Oh yeah, this was what I would do in press. So engine repetition divination homecoming game. I could also ask people who wrote this, why did they come to your mind? Because that's and of course one could say, where would you place them?
This engine I brought from our last session, so it's part of that saved state, I would say. Divination is sort of because of the tarot references.
Mm-hmm.
And repetition, I don't know, I believe there's a lot of repetition involved in games and in memes, in both. So yeah, that's why.
I'll start playing around, and we should really have the one thing this is missing is collaboration, because we should definitely have a collaboration possibility here, which I'm sorry about, but like the one possibility is that I'm not meaning that this has to be like this, but just as a possibility, then like so.
The homecoming game was maybe because I was trying to not think of something that was like that I would like, that I would receive as a suggestion from the image on an aesthetic or whatever symbolic level, but something that would somehow rhyme with it, maybe in an odd way. So I'm thinking, of course, of this. I think it's called homecoming game. This kind of university like football stuff, also that they have in the US. Is it not called that? When the team is coming to play for maybe the last game of the season. That's what that's called.
So what that brings to my mind is, and at this point, this is also while, because you can always move stuff around, one possibility is simply like place something here as, or somewhere as a way to spur ideas. So I just place like, without much thought, like repetition is because there is a breach or chasm that this thing is ripping apart. So this could be an engine, and then the repetition is the two sides. But maybe like this was kind of like a homecoming game. I mean, of course, then this could mean that the homecoming game is through this door there, but then like this whole thing could be a homecoming game. So maybe actually this is more.
I think I would place the homecoming game on the arms because there's this bit of athleticism.
In where?
On the arms of that, or what is it?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Arms.
Yeah. So okay, I can probably turn it, but I won't be fancy. But like for our purposes, it can be like on the arms now. Like I said, this is not permanent. So what made you think of the homecoming game in the arms now?
Because I thought it kind of somehow turned around what I would maybe like. Yeah, this is, I don't know. I'm very weak on this kind of witchcrafty images. But there was something that I just maybe didn't wish to read from it, and so I thought the homecoming game it maybe gave it a bit of a different symbolic, like one that is not so defined by the choice of colors and this kind of a bit cheesy symbolic there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought like the association with some like artificial turf and marching band, like some a bit more kind of ordinary materials
Mm-hmm.
could be a nice fuel on the fire for like a thought generator.
Yeah, could be
Something,
like, do say.
I was just thinking when from those earlier like kind of finished images you showed earlier, like it would probably benefit from some sort of like let's say dynamics or like a threat or something like I mean something like something devilish or something like winter is coming type of thing or something like that.
Can like in which way? Like in a way, like the winter is coming. It's like a threat. Do you mean like that? Like, or a looming threat?
Yeah, maybe a looming threat, something that is like something that is creating some more like dynamics or something like that. I'm not sure, but like in a similar way than let's say Elon Musk or like Elder Capital or something like that. This is a very like loomy image as well, or
yeah. Could be like I think you're hitting on a point there is like playing around with this, like it actually follows similar qualities than drama does in a scene. Like you want to create tensions. If it's like people just walking around, it's not interesting. But if there is a people walking around and somebody's a thief, then you have like drama in itself. Doesn't have to be necessarily drama, but I think it's certainly a source, and I think you're kind of right on like or that kind of direction. Could also be a meaning in itself. Like I thought like the engine and then ripping apart or joining together, like because the hands could be like if I just read what we have here, like for example, that okay, there's a homecoming game which is could be about ripping apart or could be about joining together because that's uncertain of things that repeat something, but maybe they're not exact repetitions. So there is an idea of an engine, or of course one doesn't have to mix every element, but maybe there's an idea of a game, a homecoming game, that is about ripping apart or putting together things. And that's already also something that could be there. And maybe that whole thing is a divination if one wants to mix elements. But then one can ask oneself, like, okay, what kind of things are these repetitions, or what is the kind of putting apart or ripping them separate? Like, and for that, of course, the question could be, or the answer could be, like, in a way, like we are now, in a way, joining things that are apart. The words are apart, separate from the image, and separate from each other, and then there's this engine joining them. So that's like one branch, which can lead to this idea of an engine that is about joining things together. But that leads to an idea that maybe it joins things by leaving this rift, like because there is this universe space underneath that when it joins them, there is this rift, which is about joining things while leaving this universe visible. And now I'm kind of getting closer to something that almost resembles like what we're doing here.
Yeah, and
would it be sorry? Was it? I mean, that was just full tarot mode that you just did there.
Yeah, or like inside a tarot, the convention of tarot is a larger engine. Like it's a tarot-like approach, but like one can think about it wider, in a way, like the basic operation types of tarot. Yes, but doesn't necessarily.
Sorry. Would it be time to, or a good time to add another image now?
I mean, we could, yeah.
A follow-up, so to speak, like a second.
We could look for such. Do say.
Just a small comment. Yeah, now that you kind of you made an interpretation, and right after it, it really kind of once you start like you make one or more these like interpretations allowed, then you start like want to know more about the divination, for instance, and each of the words, they kind of they kind of they get a lot of like meaning in this like context with other texts and with the image as well, like and immediately I start to think, okay, is our divination some sort of like entrance or exit, because there is this like entrance kind of thing? Do we need some additional resources in order to do the repetition or something like that? And okay, what is the nature of repetition, and what sort of engine is it about, and so on. So and really there's like one other from this type of like constellation. I think there might be also like it might be a kind of way to kind of grow or clear out your, let's say, your company's vision or something like that, kind of in order to and also kind of to try to express that vision more eloquently or something like that.
Or yeah, like company's vision or even project's vision or whatever's vision. Yeah, that could be one direction. But
I want to
like,
put a token on that. I want to put a token on that. That we would kind of talk about that one more time.
Okay.
It's paralleling, not now, but continue later.
Yeah, like I added the token to the vision. I made it quickly on the notes on the side that I would remember it, but let's consider that tokenized, so it's remembered. But I think, Mikael, you were hitting on key points in the early parts of your comment, which is like it is really like it seems like on the first step, like it's almost like it's harder to make the first connections. But once you have the first connections, they start to suggest new connections. So like said, like I just like without thinking through the words there, but then just this like, okay, these connect, say, in this way, like this joining or ripping apart. But then, like you said, they start to suggest, like you said, like, is it the divination? Is it like an entrance or exit? Or is the divination, which then came to my mind from your thought, is that it's like this bubble, because the door is like on the sky. And this is like a bubble, or maybe it's a world, but it's almost like one pocket. And maybe the divination is inside the pockets. And like, this is what's happening here. But then the second thought that came to me just when you were talking is like, okay, the hands have light. And so as far as I see, I mean, there's the divination door that is a light source, but the hands are the another light source. So maybe it's the hands that can rip apart or bring together are the light source. And that was just an interesting idea. Like light is something that makes things visible, makes them perceivable. So the things that act upon ripping things apart and act upon making them to come together are the source of light.
Aha! Now that you said it, so that okay, and you can like you can reinterpret and reinterpret and so on, but you can also like go deeper, kind
Yes.
of in a way. So if we open this like divination and we think of it, it creates a bubble of its own, then we can actually think that okay, this is not two-dimensional, it is three-dimensional. This can function as an index to something where we can kind of exit to, let's say, this bubble of divination and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And then I mean, the green is a little bit, and of course, in some kind of final form, this would be more coolly placed. But like you can start adding these things as mementos of the other layer, but everything is kind of changing your context of meaning. Like by adding these things, suddenly the meanings grow into, or maybe the better way to say it is that you start to see things differently because also the suggestions have changed. Maybe that's the way to think about it. So
I was just thinking one thing there in connection to what Mikael said about, like, I want to know more about that definition, or what's the repetition and so forth. And maybe that would then be what I maybe came a bit early with this kind of now, like the chance to add another image, right? When you kind of get that level deeper than just, you know, doing, like, making that move of bringing
yeah,
a new image.
we could do that, and we can even select it randomly or semi-randomly. Like I can scroll here, and somebody can say stop. Can also try to.
Do you want to try from another source though?
Like there is actually one can always.
Oh.
Let me take. But if I say more like this, it can take a while to load because they have problems with the database. Like there are.
Oh, those are cool. I like them.
It can be like said, like taking, there are photographs and one could take also those, but they tend to be harder. Like or it depends on the photograph, but like yeah, they tend to be generally harder than.
Martin, you said about you are you said that you would be interested in talking more about the kind of, for instance, repetition. Could it be so that okay, now we kind of click the link of repetition, and then we select an image where that we set the topic as repetition or something like that, so we really kind of dive into there is a hyperlink or something like that.
I'm not sure if it would, like, to me personally, need to be so literally connected, but I mean, any method right now, what I'm interested in is really to a bit kind of try out what really is this kind of, I don't know if you say at this point, world building work that the images are doing, because I think in this case, they do a lot of that work, or like they assist, maybe should be better say. So like I think it would be interesting for me to try just go a very different kind of type of language, image, maybe a different technique of how it was made, and just try what happens.
Yeah, like I put.
I don't know. Is it a technical drawing, or is it an X-ray, or you know?
Like I put like one different one, which is, let's say, more traditional art, the museum in itself, and that well, that is still paintings. There can be some photographs there, but like as you can see, like these kind of pictures are different from the earlier sources. Anything that you would pick from here, like?
I'm looking at such a small screen that I can't really participate in this section.
I mean, there is line drawings, at least. Like, say, this one, or why are you doing this? But let's select something like quick enough, because otherwise this might take a long time.
Let's take that bridge there, or the water thing.
Yeah, this one. Okay. So it's harder to, I won't be probably able to bring this to an editor, but we can imagine the text at least. Let's put it like so. Okay, so if we use this, and we can think now that this is in combination with this, it's hard to get them on the same screen. Maybe I can do that. Zoom controls are awful. Pull this here, and then I'll okay, like what's happening? Okay, so like so. That's now maybe the best that I can do. Okay, finally. Okay, so it was just like so. So we have this kind of image of that has already built something. It's like almost like in construction, and we have this new one. So what kind of things come to your mind from here?
I'm not just suggesting any words, but they are all almost identical to me. There are many pathways, and this like there is the sky, and there is the bridge, and there is the river, and so on. So there's really pathways, many pathways.
All right, so I will do like so. I will create some kind of option here, which is a little bit of a text box. So pathways.
Yes.
I'll put in floating platforms. And in the beginning, actually, I often just make what comes to my mind, like one platform, and this can be very simple, is floating away from others. And this is already kind of creating like raw stuff for meanings. Like one platform is floating away from others, or even like, let's say, boat is nearing the escaping platform.
There is also many of these structures kind of, they have kind of some sort of like role of wait a minute, not transporting, but carrying maybe, or something like that. It's
transfer, vehicles of transfer, or instruments of transfer.
Just a quick check, if I may.
Yep.
I'm just thinking back of the first, let's say, memes that you showed, like, and like now I feel that the kind of class of words that we're finding becomes rather like closely tied to the image, like almost descriptive. Whereas in the beginning, like the examples that you showed, they were really coming from a different universe, you know, like the Elon Musk and the, you know, whatever you had there. So I'm just wondering what is it that we're kind of now fishing for when we take words in order to kind of create this, you know, playable tension maybe.
So it's either or. Like the first ones, of course, because they were also kind of almost like a different genre. Like I said, it was just a kind of a prototype, or like this was playing with this sort of memes, which is often this is this relation, and you can certainly play with that. It's an interesting notion you're putting on, like. But the main point is, like, I think everything can work, like. But as I was saying with these words, I'm also kind of trying to a little bit open up how this becomes easier, and one of the things I do is kind of start with maybe saying the obvious, like I was saying earlier, because that is already traveling elsewhere. Like bridge is mixing with the moon. That is just saying what's there in a certain way. But then what is well, this can open me to the question is, what is a crossbreed between a bridge and a moon? So you can almost think about this as painting or writing or whatever. Like, I'm not thinking necessarily that these words go to the meat. Like, just like it doesn't really work in painting that you're trying to draw the finish lines first, or it doesn't work with writing that you're trying to write from beginning to end finished text. Like, the same really applies here. For like in a way, like, well, you can maybe succeed in that, but most likely you're kind of drawing it about, because you're kind of creating a work in a way, like if you're turning it into text. Like, what is a crossbreed between bridge and a moon is already an interesting thought. And of course I could write it there, crossbreed between bridge and a moon, into the image itself. But what can come out of there is like maybe the crossbreed between bridge and the moon is like a boat in one way. So that creates me a phrase of boat of bridge and the moon. Which is then an interesting thought, that maybe this boat is the boat of the bridge and the moon, and then the white sail is in shines like the moon. And this can take me to the directions that are more word-like, but it can also take me to places that are more concept-like, the kind of theoretic direction, which leads to all the way to concepts in a way. Like okay, there is a boat called Bridge and the Moon, and one of its qualities is that its sail shines like the moon. We have a symbolic image, but it's also something that could exist in a tarot card. But then this idea that there is a boat that actually kind of combines the idea of a bridge, because boats travel from one place to another, but they're kind of like the moon because they drift about, like on the sea, like the moon drifts about in the sky. That's already starting something concept like that is not yet coined. Like, what is a kind of traveling that is both drifting and transferring, by the way, like bringing Mikael's instruments of transfer. And now, like, I'm trying to describe at the same time kind of like this kind of build-up and how something new is born. Or this is, of course, not the only way, but certainly can work in this kind of way. So, but it's always like this, this sort of like traveling somewhere. Like the one thing that often keeps this from happening is this sort of mental patterns, which is like when one sees a road, then the mind is repeating in a subliminal manner, it's a road, it's a road, it's a road, it's a road, and you have to kind of fight it. It's like and break away from that, and that's often a common problem. Like fighting it leads to one step, and then the one step leads to second step, and after 3-4 steps you have something interesting.
What I find very interesting also when comparing these two images, they seem to have the same kind of or same words could be applied to the second one as well. There is some sort of divination, and there clearly is some sort of like engine and repetition likeness, and so on, and still this first one was very, let's say, stormy, and it's kind of very dramatic, and this second one is very like calm and peaceful as an image, and at the same time this second image could easily be kind of put inside the bubble of either divination or engine or so on, because of its, this is very like infrastructure like image as well in many ways, and it's really interesting that you could actually put this in both of the images kind of you could kind of merge or put them inside each other or whatever, but interesting kind of hyperlinks one can see there as well.
Yeah, and it's also like, now that you started talking about the combination, I put like a crude arrow there, like that this figure now, it's a bridge, like the one who is combining the one with the hands. It's a bridge because I mean it's really like literally like a bridge. And then I like, what happens if this is the boat between the bridge and the moon, and this is the sailor between bridge and the moon, because it's also light, because the hands are light. But naming it a sailor, then these two images, one of course would develop more maybe of the boat, and the other might develop of the sailor, and they are semi-independent, but also there is an interesting combination. It's like, why is the sailor like this? Is this the okay, I had a question. Is this the inner landscape of the sailor? Meaning this image on the left. Is this the inner landscape of the sailor? And now, like, new things are bouncing around again. Like, okay, so we are looking maybe that there is this boat between the bridge and the moon, and it's a sort of between transfer and drifting. But then this image is now, the one on the left is actually the inner landscape of the sailor, and they are, and maybe they are. Maybe it wouldn't be the text that we have exactly there, but maybe some of the themes could be there. That it's about like separating versus joining, and they maybe they want to separate and join at the same time.
I think what is, I was going to add as a term still, the hyperlink, because Mikael also brought that up twice. And I think what's going to be kind of interesting structurally is that we're now trying to kind of contain one image in the other, like as a, you know, a small box in a bigger box, or the other way around. And I think that's funny as a kind of mental response to having been given two images now. And this kind of, is that what you call like a semantic need of like somehow getting them to relate one way? And so I was wondering whether one could bring up a third image now, because you asked the question, Victor, is that maybe the inner landscape of the sailor? Maybe that's a question that could be a trigger for a new image.
I mean, could be. Like, we could try to bring, like, the one problem is the screen. Like, to bring third images might create practical limitations in some ways. But the one thought on this is like, okay, just to say, like, I was looking at the first or the left image on the left as if it would be the inner landscape of the sailor, which is a change, of course, but it doesn't matter. Like, actually, this is precisely the nature of creation. Like, then what could carry over is that maybe the inner landscape is that they have this contradicting wish of separating and joining things simultaneously, which is just an, and then this image could, like, if that would be the starting point for this image, you could put other things on it, like that it's an image of separating and joining simultaneously. And in between, okay, then there's a universe between, like, when you're separating and joining simultaneously, you're bringing something together, but you're leaving the rift of the universe in between. Like, there's always a void or an abyss between them. And then that can lead to interesting thoughts as well, like interesting directions as well. But final point on this, like, as like a thematically, where we are moving now is a space where it's like marked by not existing concepts. Of course, they can feed it, but we're moving in kind of a outside of the ropes of language. And also, it's not meaning that it's coming from, say, an existing tarot card or something, but it's building structures. But it's building structures to areas that are less traveled, essentially. And now, like, from here, like, one could go to a world where one says, "Oh, I'm creating a world where there's this boat between a mythical boat called." The boat between Bridge and the Moon, and it has the sailor that sails it, which is called the sailor between Bridge and the Moon, and then take this stuff as a way to flesh that out. But I could also go to a story, which is like, I want to tell a story about this boat and the sailor, and then I could bring other images to actually figure out what does that mean. Like, I don't necessarily know yet what is the joining and separating at the same time, but I use the other things to tell the story, maybe with friends, and that's another way of it fleshing itself out, or another way, or another way. And yeah, so like, this is pointing out like how, like, in this roads less traveled, or things that are not really roads in kind of unknown semantic space, these kind of game structures can provide scaffoldings to build, and you can always drop from there. Like, you could bring this one image with the boat and bring it like a tarot card, or bring it like a presence in the world, or bring it like an element in a story into the world outside and communicate to others.
I have to leave in maybe 2 minutes, but I will just shortly say that I really start to see the potential that kind of emerges from this method or something more, and like one thing that also came to my mind in kind of XORG context is a kind of possibility to create some sort of like interoperability. I mean that if we take, let's say, we take an image that reflects something that more has the structure of, let's say, mega dungeon, and then we take an image that represents something more like, let's say, okay, what some other thing that we have been playing and trying out, and then no matter what it is, and then we can kind of we can find these sort of like sailors and bridges and moons and ways to kind of let's say carry out whatever from one scene or instance to another, be it let's say an avatar, a token, or whatever. So
yeah, definitely. Like even like to populate the mega dungeon with genes like that give you implications of what could be there or these kind of things. Of course, it could be populated with other things, but that could be a way to start to open it out. And the one thing I would say towards the XORG in general, one thing I find really interesting here is that like these themes that we have touched upon with this saving and capturing and the kind of world structure, I'm using the word realm structure to kind of separate from like conventions of the world because it's more flexible, but like possible realm structure that we have been touching upon from many sides. Like this is a way to create almost like very flexible but concrete version of it. I'm not meaning one gene, I'm meaning like the combinations that they can create. And that is an interesting way of expressing that kind of structure. Like as a meaning structure, it's kind of huge. Like what like going to a world and suddenly packaging that leads to something very different than going to a story to versus going to a tarot card or but these are kind of like places in this real realm of possibilities, and they can have very different qualities. Like if we were creating a sea, and one of the points we put on the sea is this boat, it would be once again different. Like but then maybe we put some other things, and then that becomes the nature of that particular sea. Or if we were creating a tarot-like deck, then it would be once again different, and so on and so on. So that is an interesting possibility to also show people a certain realm of possibilities that opens through meanings and their play. But since we're nearing our modest limits in time, also, like we could take also any last comments or towards the end kind of comments.
Maybe I just have a question. What's next?
I think it's a question for everybody. I think this was something I wanted to open up as both structural example, but also as potential. If it's definitely something that is interesting also as a game because it opens up. It's kind of like there's not quite such a game in the world, like because the game is immediately social, nobody owns it, but also like there's no right pieces. There's an infinite amount of pieces, and new pieces are born again. So that's also a direction. but like, what do we want from it? That's a question, I think, for everyone. Beyond that, it's also like a tool, but like, yeah, like how to use that tool is, or that instrument is maybe a better word, is up to everyone.
I thought that like this was a very nice session, kind of combination of analysis and playing together. And I was wondering if the connection that Mikael there proposed could be tried, like for example, trying this systematics together with the mega dungeon idea, and if we could just do that the next time, so that we have like just kind of 2 game testing sessions in a row.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think definitely it's fairly new, so it's fairly raw. Like in raw things, I generally look for potential, and there's a huge amount of potential. That's and the one thing then to explore what kind of forms it could stabilize itself, like give people conventions of playing it, etc. Like the mega dungeon or similar directions could be a way to search for such stabilities. Like I enjoy very much this sort of like open play, like anything could happen, but like also for people it's easier that there is like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do kind of things. One thing actually that I thought of in the middle, but it actually would have been easier to start with a narrower framework, like to make, say, a place or a character, or because it's less possibilities, and it helps to it makes it easier to think. But I do think like the mega dungeon or that kind of direction could be one way to create a narrower framework to work with.
It's for me the mega dungeon is as raw as anything because I don't have a real grip on it at this moment. So I thought that was why it could be interesting to try those 2 together, because it feels like this is easily generative, right? Today's method, it goes really fast, and then kind of to me, I said this to we had a when I had a short call in between. I said that this mega dungeon is really interesting because of these kind of how to say, yeah, these, you said it also, these kind of like the way that it kind of projects structure in some sense, and like to even find out what structure that is that it projects. And yeah, I don't know, I just thought it was like, but it doesn't have to be this one. I just think that like somehow, like I just think that like trying to kind of go more thick in the playing tries, like to kind of take a next step in playing and connect maybe this with something else, or just try this one more time.
Yeah. Let's. I definitely agree. We could definitely talk about that and like think of the directions and calibrate by what people want in terms of the next time. But just as a point towards the mega dungeon, I remade just a new start. Like now the image on the left is the room of the moon and the bridge maker. Now one can think that actually the portal is a doorway where you come to this huge room, and the moon is really the doorway itself. But then there is the bridge maker, who appears, say, as this figure that holds a bridge, and suddenly you're in a different place again. Like it's utilizing some of the earlier meanings, but also kind of once again in a new guise. So yeah, like that's certainly possible, and of course you could put it as scene as well as a room, and then that's something slightly different again. So yeah, but we can take this was kind of like a populating the ground, like it's this sort of like construction yard of potential, and we essentially kind of went through the basic tools and played around with it, and now we can decide what to do with the possibilities in and of themselves. But I do think also like giving it a little bit more form and making it as a social proposal would be rather interesting, because I know there would be interest for meme scene is huge, and then like doing something different in the meme scene is probably something that can gather large interest if it reaches people.
Yeah, that sounds like a, of course, very good direction.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, hey, now I have to go. Bye-bye.
Yeah, all right, yes. Yeah, sorry for keeping you. And I guess we're finishing generally. So I'll just press with gusto. Once I find it, I'll stop the recording.